I'm curious if you've noticed in your work, team to team, like comparing them across years and across even, 1 year to the next for some of DQ's teams. When you have a guy like a Matt Ryan, who was with Logan in Atlanta, guy like Bobby Wagner here, and you get into these sessions, do you see some of the leaders emerge? Do you occasionally get to a team and you're like, man, you don't have to name names here if you don't want to, but by all means, it would be great for the podcast if you did. You get to a team and you're like, oh, this team's in trouble. They don't have any leadership. Like, we can do the best we can, but ultimately, like, this team needs a dude and they don't have a dude. Like, can you tell those types of things as you start to work with these teams?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, when you start to make guys uncomfortable, then you'll see some guys, it's a very weird thing, to be at that far end of the bell curve, working at that far end of the bell curve. It's a very strange thing. It's kind of like, I guess some guys, it's kind of like the honed edge of a knife. Like, it's very, very sharp, but it can also be very fragile, So a guy is that good, if you shake him a little bit, where it's like, hey, you're out of your element now. Now what do you do? They don't like that. They don't enjoy that. Other times there'll be a guy that's like, yeah, this is all I needed was, a chance to demonstrate that I can think under pressure. I can make decisions under pressure. And in that type situation, you'll see guys that you would not have imagined step up and start like, hey, come on, you. And it'll be like some guy that maybe he's never been recognized as a heavy hitter. But he'll just emerge. I remember when we were in, it was a trip though. One of the things we had to deal with, because when we were in Atlanta and when Logan was there, and I remember you texted me, man, after that, the exercise that we did. And I can't remember were you there the year before?
No, I was there in 17. So I missed all like the hard stuff, and I got to just do fun stuff with paintball guns and night missions and stuff. So it was cool.
Did you do the hostage rescue one?
Yes.
Where we did. That was really cool. And
wait, who was the hostage?
Just people in the building, like employees. Like, It was like they got like people like around the building to volunteer to be like, like combatants and all this kind of stuff. And so you'd show up, you're like, man, you're like the lunch lady. Like, why do you have a paintball gun? You know what I mean? Like, it just was like a random deal. But yeah,
that's funny. It'd be pretty hilarious if like Julio Jones was the hostage. The whole Dimitrov's running down from the front office.
Well, it was cool because the first year, the first time we did a scenario thing with the team, we had Scar was the hostage, and we did.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Were you there for that one?
Yeah, I was there for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the one that everybody was looking forward to the next time, and it was super fun, but there was lots of lessons involved of like how you think under pressure, and a lot of this was for the coaches. And like quick recap, the way we did it was we hooked up with the Atlanta SWAT guys, and we had this at their facility. And we had the Atlanta SWAT guys being the the opposing force. But I had to tell them like very specifically, like stand in this place. And when they come around that corner, you shoot at them. And when they shoot back, you fall down dead. Because the point of this is to teach guys like, look, you got a plan, but now when it gets hectic or people start doing different things, you got to be able to think through this and talk through this. It's not paintball. I don't want you to just go paintballing.
Mm-hmm. Right, because the football players versus the SWAT team in paintball, advantage SWAT team.
Yeah, right.
Unless you set up the SWAT team to fail, which was the point of the drill. That was actually success.
Yeah, but what we saw was like we had the older players, we had the vets going last. So those guys launched out at like midnight. And the reason we had to do it like this was because like union rules, like you can only work guys for this amount of time. So we had to be like, all right, you show up at this time. You're going to work for like an hour and then you go away. Get out of here. You're not on the clock. But so the first crew we had was actually the coaches, and they went in broad daylight. And this was when the SWAT guys were still doing what I asked them to do. And like they stand in a place and like ding, 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 die American. And then they fall down. And some of the coaches were like, one guy, I don't remember who it was, but one guy went to Plaid and like, he's like, started wandering off into the bushes. I was like, hey, where are you going?
Oh, that's right. Like, yeah, I remember that story. Yeah.
And like, where are you going, man? And he's like, what? I'm like, get on the bus.
Yeah.
Goes and gets on the bus. But now the last crew, like the SWAT guys were just all over the place, but they had a really good plan. And they got in there, they grabbed Scar, and that poor guy, like he got ragdolled for like 5 runs in a row, like these giant dudes like lifting him up and throwing him into the back of the van. It's like, this sucks. I'm never doing this again. But the second one, the next year that Logan was talking about, Matt Ryan got kind of bent out of shape because the way we did this was we made this so that it was like you have to adjust on the fly. We focused more on adjusting on the fly. So, like when you get a guy injured midseason or you come out here with an approach to this team that's not working, you got to adjust. What are you going to do? So that was what we did with this. So we told them it was like going to be the same thing. You're going to go link up with this partisan faction, get handed your paintball guns. You're going to go, save the princess, slay the dragon, or whatever. And we got out there, and half of them got to go save the princess, and the other half of them got rolled up and put in like a POW situation.
Yeah, dude, people were hot. Craig, people were pissed. Like people were really upset because last year was so fun. And then all of a sudden it was like you didn't get to do it and you got to like hang out in a bunker for an hour. Like it was like I remember people being so upset about it. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
He was Logan texted me later and he's like, "Hey man, 2 is hot over this thing." And I was like, 2? Who the hell is 2? And he's like, Matt Ryan, dude, he's mad about this. He wanted to do the thing. He's mad about this. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you got, when you're at a level of you got infinite money, dude, I'll set up a paintball thing for you. We'll do it on an island somewhere. We can go do that. I'll get like a legit role players out here. We'll get Carlos.
That was not the point of the drill, Matt. Come on.
Yeah.
But I told him him and who else, man?
A lot of people were upset about it. All the old guys were upset about it because like they all wanted to go do the game. Yeah. And they didn't get to do it.
And I talked to a couple guys the next day and I was like, look, the fact that you're talking about this the next day tells me that the point was made. Like this was what you needed. Like you needed to be in a position where you're disappointed, you're pissed off, you got to think on the fly. And now you got the girl from the lunchroom is slapping you, telling you answer the question.
That's right. Yeah. But the other thing I'd say about it though, it's like, cause it seemed so, I don't know. It just seemed like fun. But I will say like it was one of the best team building things that I did in my 10 years in the NFL because it like forced you to be with a bunch of guys that you didn't know that well, right? So I remember my first year we did the SCAR rescue with the SWAT team. Like Matt Ryan took us all out to dinner and like I was on his like boat crew and so we all got to hang out with Matt. We got to make a plan. We got to communicate. And so like just kind of building that cohesiveness. And then the second year, I remember I was like the leader of the boat crew. Oh yeah. And it was really good for me, honestly, to kind of, again, like learn how to communicate with different types of people because you're with like, the third string linebacker, you got the kicker on your team, you've got the starting offensive lineman. So everyone's kind of got a different way of communicating. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was like you said, you try not to do this, but in that environment of like, I'm like super type A, I want to control every facet. And the feedback I got on the leadership side was like, you're being too controlling. You don't let people kind of go out and do their thing. And I thought, man, that's something that I've lived with as a rule for the rest of my life, because it's like, I can't like micromanage you in every situation. Mm-hmm. I've got to empower you enough to kind of go make this decision. So not only did I get to learn my teammates and learn how to communicate with every facet of the roster, but I also got to learn kind of some stuff about myself in terms of managing those relationships. And so I don't know, it was one of those things where again, like it's fun and you're with the guys, you're hanging out. But I remember thinking like this is really, really cool for all of these reasons, right? Yeah, I get to know my team, especially with the free agency situation, the way it's set up now. It's like I remember from what was it, that offseason in 16 to the offseason in 17, the roster turnover was like 50%. So you had to learn a bunch of new guys, you know what I'm saying? And I just think it's something that I think a lot of people maybe poo-poo or they don't really see the value in, but I'd say both those 2 off seasons, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the team. And I do think it's like a strong kind of binding factor with those groups.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are on a very compressed schedule compared to what we do, in the SEAL teams. I mean, with us, it was like, a lot of these will be people you already know, and now you say you go to a different team, like I'm at Team 1, and now I go be an instructor, and I go to Team 5. I'll show up, and there'll be guys that I know. I might be in a platoon with a bunch of guys I know, but we've got a year and change of a workup where we're going to be together every single day for 12 hours a day, and then we're going to deploy. You guys got, a couple of months, and in some cases, it's some college kid, and you don't know this guy's deal. Like he might be on some total other page. And how do you deal with that? But I mean, what you're talking about, I think that's like one of those early leadership lessons where you're like, how much is too controlling and how much is, I'm strangling your innovation, or, if I give you too much rope and now you screw this up, it's like finding that happy medium.
Yeah, it's funny because like you talk about that, like, and people say, well, why does that matter? But it's also like in terms of how you interact with people. You mentioned the young guys coming in or the free agents coming in. Like, how do I, as a leader, and I might not have like, the Matt Ryan level of leadership, but you're everyone's kind of a leader in their own way. Like, how do I communicate with this person and stuff like this? And like you talked about, you said like making guys uncomfortable to see how they react is another like tool, right? Like, as if this guy's really upset or he can't handle adversity, like how do I motivate him in these situations? And I think it's great for the whole roster over this 3 or 4 day period to kind of figure that out. And I don't know, was that a goal of you guys? Was that a goal when you kind of set out to start do this, or was that just kind of a happy byproduct?
Yeah, I mean, that was something that kind of presented itself early on, and I think that is something that you see in the SEAL teams because you're together so much. You're not just together on your equivalent of a football field. You're out in the bush or whatever. You're together all the time. You're together at meals. You're together in the rental car. You're together all the time. So you get to see guys in a variety of situations. So you can kind of you tend to learn how guys think, how they communicate, how they interpret the world around them. For you guys, it can be, I think it's a little more restricted where maybe you see guys in the meal room, but then you see guys in the locker room and on the field. And between there, it's like, I don't know, do guys hang out or not? Sometimes, sometimes not. So that's, we see that with players, and we also see that with like a lot of our corporate clients is taking them out of that boardroom setting, taking them out of that work environment. They get to appreciate each other for like, oh, this guy he's really smart in this kind of way, or this guy is really thoughtful in that kind of way. So when you need an idea, the person that's pitched is like, this is the star, because I think leadership is its own skill set. So a guy could be a phenomenal linebacker, a phenomenal quarterback, whatever. That doesn't make him a great leader. That's its own skill set. And it's the same thing in the teams. Like, you might be a great shooter, but he's not a very good leader. A guy could be a great leader. Like, well, he's a mediocre 60 gunner, whatever. But it's its very own skill set.
Right.
And when a guy develops that, but you develop that, and then recognizing that, from the higher ups, like, oh, this guy's got a good brain on him. Let's see what we can do with him.
Right.